excuse me, where is street?
Oh, you're welcome.
What was the airport?
How is it? Check this here.
Was airport?
Sure. Okay. Lord. Yeah, I think you can write this fine. You can write your name.
You can leave it blank.
It's video.
Oh, you are the first day people. Yeah, welcome. Okay. So you are the television. Alright.
Oh, text me.
No,
Yeah, I'm at the program. When I go, so I'll call you.
Peter, are you downstairs?
Audible. Hi everybody, good morning. How are you all doing? I'm just hearing one person now. Please, how are we all doing? Are we hungry? I hope not. Okay, good morning to everybody, and thank you so much for visiting your presence. There's a saying that goes like the early bird catches the worm. Since we're the early bird, we're going to catch all the worms. Those who come first will not get any wormless. Let's hope that we don't finish this all. And there's still some exciting things by the time you join us. So I am the moderator for today. My name is Margaret Imprim, and I work with Green Africa Youth Organization, and I'm really honored to be the moderator for this lovely event. Let's clap for ourselves for being here very early. Great. So this event is all about air pollution, disaster preparedness, and response workshop. So it means that we are coming here to learn, not just to listen, to take something home. A bit of a rationale about our activity, what we are looking at. In Accra, rapidly developing urban, we face increasing challenges related to air quality, and like vehicular emissions, industrial activities, waste burning, and dust from construction contribute to elevated levels of pollutants. And I'm sure we're all here because we definitely agree to that. In severe cases, these conditions can escalate into air quality disasters, posing significant threats to public health. Effective preparedness and coordinated response are crucial to mitigating the impact of such events, and this training aims to equip all of us from different walks of life with the knowledge, skills, and frameworks necessary to anticipate, prepare for, respond to, and recover from air quality disasters. This workshop will feature expert presentations, and I'm sure they're all ready to share with us, interactive discussions, and practical insights to enhance awareness and preparedness for air pollution disaster events. Participants like yourselves will learn more about air quality monitoring, health impact, effective communication strategies during a crisis, and the importance of community resilience, ultimately contributing to a more informed and prepared public. We're going to start, but we want to know who we are. And I think I introduced myself as the moderator, so you know me. So when you see me, I'm Margaret. We want to let every other person introduce themselves. So just let us know your name. Oh, there's no time for that. Okay. I've been told that we can definitely do introduction during the breakfast and the lunch period. So please just know that if I see you quiet, you're in trouble because you have another agenda for the introduction period. All right. We'll start by inviting our Accra Citizens Hub coordinator in the person of Lord Ofe Dako to share more about insights and community engagement. Let's give it up for him. Lord, let's give it up for him more. I think he needs more of the energy, so the more we clap, the more he's going to be here. So let's give it up more, please. Oh, please, let's clap here. He's coming. Thank you, Lord.
Good morning once again. I'm happy to host you all here. Thanks for showing up on time. And I just want to use this opportunity to speak a little bit of what we've been doing as a hub. I can see some of you are new here. Probably you've not heard about us before. You just saw us doing it and you want to experience what we do in real time. So this is just a brief of some of the activities we've been undertaking as a hub in the form of an outcome, in a document form, which I just want to share. Not to waste much time, but then this was something that happened on 8th March 2025. And it's more of like a policy brief for policymakers to be aware of what's actually happening at the local level, what's actually happening on ground, and then let them know how best they can go about mitigating some of the issues. And this is all youth-driven and youth-led by our 10 leaders who some are representing here today. So this is an activation brief, a data collection activity we undertook at the Medina Market, and this is actually what we found. So the date of activation, the day we took the data was 22nd February 2025, and these were some of the problems we identified. And we can tell that the Medina Market is actually known for dense local transport systems. if I say local transport systems, I mean our local total that we all know of. And the Medina market area is dense with that, from various local stations to all that. And as you all know, there are various sensor readings within this site as well. So over the past 2-3 months, we've been observing as a hub with the managers, and we realized that air pollution or air quality in that particular area, the Lampantanang, if I'm right, or particularly in the Manila market, it's been high. It's been high. It's always high above the normal readings, and it's always red on the map. So it's like we decided to go find out what's happening over there. And on site, we realized that, okay, so with the amount of throttle we have on the streets of Manila, from local stations and the ones moving about, it's no use these rates are very high. I mean, aside the cars, we also have dusty roads, we also have open burning, criminality, and also have open waste, open dumping areas or refuse areas. But then it came to light that the issue of the vehicular emissions was actually higher than all that. And so those are some of the problem identifications and training we underwent. And our primary question during our data collection was to know what extent these truck vehicles contribute to elevated PM 2.5 levels in densely populated areas like Medina Market. So scrolling down, how did we actually go about this? So it was actually conducted in the morning. It was conducted on Saturday, and we all know Saturday is a market day, so it's one of the most busiest days. And it was actually done early in the morning, that's 8:45 a.m. on 22nd February. And yes, that's the same thing. I was chosen on this day because it's peak market activity. And also, it serves as a microcosm of similar market areas across the region. You can compare our market structures. They are all similar. So if this is happening in Medina, probably maybe agglomeration might be bigger than Medina, but then it's the same situation throughout. Our local market areas are definitely all similar. So this is was to serve as a benchmark. When we were making the presentation to the Ministry of Transport, this was a benchmark to compare to other market scenarios as well. And in the name of Madam Sego from the Ministry of Transport, we were all commended and giving a letter for the hard work the young people are playing in promoting sustainable transport systems here in Ghana. So moving down, it involved a group of participants. So I use this opportunity to tell you that when we are going out for activities, we recruit people as well. You could always join us. There are centers available for you. As you know, we undertake certain trainings to help you know how best our center works and how you can apply the sensor on the field. So we will be happy to host you on the field during our data collection activities. So yes. And then we also have our Urban Better Citizens application, which you can check on Play Store or you can check on Apple Store as well. You can download that app and use it on a random day to contribute to data gathering. Please, yeah. So yes, that's what I was saying. So we collected the data using a dual approach, using our sensors and then the app that we actually use, which you can search and actually find it online. And then some of the limitations we encountered during our data collection activity was related to the built environment. So what we do is, before we go out to collect the data, we plan out our maps. We map out our routes on Google Maps. And it's like what we actually mapped out. When we go to the field, it wasn't actually like that. There are certain areas that are blocked by certain people. You have to pay before you'll be able to enter. Some people also say that they open at certain times. So yes, the built environment within the market is also something we found out. It wasn't our major objective, but it was one of the things that limited our data collection activity. So in the long run, we had to change some of our roads. So yes, speaking in some of the key insights that we found out. So after we collect our data with our sensor and then our apps, we actually sit down as a team, the hub, including the 10 managers and me. We used a short flash framework, sort of a little bit hardcore citizen science. So you can check what the short flash framework is, and that's what we actually used to make meaning out of the data that we collected. And these were some of our key findings. Yeah, so the PM levels were very high in certain areas. It was as high as 50. And these were directly linked to the dense traffic areas. So we have a data visualization platform that we use. I'll keep you in a little bit of suspense so that you come join us and experience what we do in real time. And also know some of the applications and the technology that we actually use to make this outcome. But then in certain areas, you realize that the vehicular emissions were very high. These were due to these dense traffic areas that you see Medina, the Zongo Junction area. There's some form of, I don't know if it's a station or the traffic light that causes that sort of traffic, but then there was a very dense vehicular arrangement over there, and that was where we had most of our spikes. And then throughout the route, we hardly didn't see any area where there were minimal readings. The readings were high throughout, and these were related to the entire road as well. And there is no green space in Medina. If there is, maybe someone can correct me, but we did not see any green space in Medina. We saw some attempted seedlings by the roadside as pavement, but they are all died out. So there is no green space in Medina. And the place is not built for mobility. It's not really built for human mobility. There is no structured sidewalks. There is no bench. That something's happened to you, you can actually take a seat or something. So it's just not even structured for human mobility. It's not safe to be walking on the streets of Medina because you are walking, the trottoir is just passing so good. They sometimes even shout at you to move, they are coming. So this is how dangerous the streets of Medina is, aside just the chart of air pollution. So going down, yes, so as I said, these are all been explained, so you can just move on. Other health and climate risks, it has been explained. Perception of walkability, it has been explained. Yes, so in summary, the activation or the data collection that we actually do, it's at our course a critical public health challenge. The levels of PM 2.5 in that area is alarmingly high. And we realized that these local transport systems were one of the major reasons why there were very, very high spikes. And some form of intervention has to be made. You know, aside this as well, we went down to the community level. I mean, if you observe us on LinkedIn, if you observe us on Twitter, on Instagram, Urban Better, or Accra Citizens Hub, or Urban Better, you can follow any of these to get to understand what I'm talking about in real time. We had a community engagement within the citizens in Medina. I call them citizens. They are all citizens now. Within Medina, and some of them, particularly the local transport drivers, shared some of their concerns because certain car conditions shouldn't be roadworthy. How are they still flying the roads of Ghana? How are they still flying the roads of Accra within that condition? How do they get the roadworthy stickers in the first place? There were some amazing insights that we actually found out with some kind of illegality. I mean, how they tend to pass their way through the system and still get these stickers to make their cars roadworthy. But then yes, certain drivers also made aware that our fuel grading system in Ghana is not so good. I asked them, okay, there is Shell, there's Total, I was like, you can't afford it because it's too expensive. So these are some of the conditions that they actually go through. They claim they buy the car, but then it comes to Ghana, they get to fuel the car 2-3 months, and the car is just smoking abnormally. And then also, the other issue is, it's a business. The throttle thing is a business. And getting capital to buy a brand new car, structural, is almost impossible to them. So they always have to buy the low-grade cars, which the engine is almost ending their lifespan. And then they tend to manage to be able to make ends meet, all in the name of livelihoods. So these outcomes, they are just multifaceted. We cannot just limit it to one person. It spans across governments, NGOs, individuals, churches, and all that. So it's bigger than we actually think, and it requires a more united front to be able to tackle such challenges. It starts with you, it starts with me, it starts with schools, it starts with NGOs, it starts with government agencies, it starts with multinational corporations and all that. So these are some of the prescriptions that we actually put into specific interventions that can help improve upon the situation. That's the stricter emission standards for public transport vehicles, enforcing regular vehicular maintenance checks, and incentivizing the transition to cleaner energy alternatives such as electric buses. Because when I had a chat with these drivers, they were like, oh yeah, my car for my car and a 250 I mean, these people are ready for change. But then, why isn't there the change we are expecting? There's always this demon of poverty behind the scenes. But then, that is not really mentioned because it's a baseline factor. It's something we cannot ignore, it's something we cannot just look upon. It's a baseline factor, so we tend just not to mention it. So yes, with the street level, at the community engagement level, they are ready to change. If frameworks are in place, these people are ready to comply. They are even happy to drive a brand new car. They will be happy to get some form of incentives, like bring your old car, have something small and come for a new one. These drivers are ready to change. We just need stricter frameworks and some form of enforcement. So yes, these are some of the prescriptions we are actually doing. If you could go up. Yes, so here are some next steps. So in our inside brief, we provide next steps for, as I said earlier, the issue is multifaceted. So we provide next steps for residents, for civil society, for industry, and for decision makers and policy makers, you and I. We all have a role to play to make this possible. The residents can engage in community-led initiatives to plant trees. They can, if there is no green space, and they know that their health is being impacted, they can go ahead to put in effort to put out some, because when the government tried to put out some seedlings by the roadside, they were the ones to destroy them. So probably they don't really know the essence of green spaces, but then they know that the condition of the environment is not good. And then we also have a role that civil society can play, that's the name of our hub, the name of GAIO, other NGOs present. It's awareness creating, it's about campaigns, it's about going down to the community level to engage, to ask the way forward, mitigate steps. Because they are the ones facing the real-time issue. So if there will be a change, there's this perception that if there will be a change, then they must also be included in the steps that will actually be taken. And industry, we have cleaner transport technologies. They can actually make some subsidies for these local drivers to be able to change their vehicles. And governments can also enforce stricter emission standards and provide incentives for the adoption of cleaner technologies, like the way we're able to phase out these kind of fridges that produce higher levels of, I don't know if you remember this kind of high sense initiative where they were like, our old air conditioning for a new one. Yeah. Yes, that was just to phase out a certain phase of technology that was depleting the ozone. So this was made possible. And if that was made possible, then transition to greener alternatives or cleaner technologies can also be made possible through the incentivization approach. So with the hub, we all know what we are doing as a hub, collecting data, raising awareness, engaging policymakers. This is the model we are actually working with. And definitely, we'll be taking feedback after this workshop to see if indeed impact is being felt, because I can't say I'm making impact. It has to come from the community, it has to come from the group. So we'll definitely be waiting with what you have to tell us. So thank you very much for your attentiveness. And you could always contact us at accracitizens@science. You can follow us on social media. We are always ready to engage, we're ready to link up. We're always ready to join your campaign. We're always ready to give you our tech to undertake research with it and all that. So please let us know when you have that. Thank you very much.
Amazing. This is a very thought-provoking presentation. How many of us are not surprised of their results? Did they surprise us? In a way, maybe just one comment. How did they surprise you? Just one comment.
We expected Accra to break in. Yes, I mean, some of the factors, we've been working around climate change and then making sure that the environment is clean, but he has equally given us little information, especially regards to maybe either mitigating factors or even other people that mostly we don't actually think of that equally contributes to the pollution in the environment. And that's a wonderful presentation.
Please give it up for Evan Better. I mean, we'll probably take a lot for this research. Oh, there's a comment. Okay.
No, mine is not actually a comment, it was a question. I wanted to know.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, I wanted to know if their research or data collection is solely done in and around Medina or is just starting phase.
Yeah, so currently we are a hub. These are some of the things we'll be discussing with you as time goes on. We are a hub and we operate in cities, right? So we started within Accra, but we are hoping to scale up our initiative to other cities. If you want to host a hub in Tamale, if you want to host a hub in a city in Upper West, in a city in Bonga Hafo, you can follow up with our Hub Network Coordinator online. Just search about Better Hub Network Coordinator and just drop in a message and fill in the forms. But now we are working within the space of Accra, not just Medina, but then we are the Accra Citizens Hub. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm going to leave the microphone then because we have another session of the Q&A. So I'll leave that for you, lovely participants, to ask all your questions. I'm sure there are others who want to comment, but we'll give it for our next speaker, who is going to talk a bit more into the whole issue at hand, how to deal with it. I mean, we are here to look at the response mechanism, what we can do to make ourselves resilient. I wasn't surprised about this research because if you look at the amount of churches in Medina alone, if you are coming like in the afternoon, late in the evening, you see them lined up and then they are all with different kinds of fumes, different colors, and different things. But we are hopeful that with people like Evan Better, we're going to learn more about what to do about it. So if you have any questions, please keep them or write them. And we will have a session where you can ask Lord how to be part, how to do what you're doing, how to engage, and everything. Because we want everyone together to support this noble cause. We're going to invite Dr. Elvis Chirejabo with the Clean Air Fund. A bit about him. He leads the delivery of the Breathe Cities project for a city in Ghana, from strategy development to scoping and granting partners, ensuring strong partners management and monitoring and reporting process. So he is the Breathe Cities portfolio manager for Ghana. Over the last decade, Dr. Elvis has worked in the environmental sector in Ghana with experience in air quality and noise monitoring, air dispersion modeling, and geographic information system analysis. He's also carried out consultancy work for a variety of clients, including USAID, WHO, Eni Ghana Limited, and various players in the mining and energy sector in West Africa. He has a PhD in transport geography from the University of Ghana, where he has researched accessibility and equity to healthcare and education in Accra. He also has a master's in environmental science from the University of Hohenheim in Germany and a certified agronomist with a master's in agriculture from the University of Copenhagen, Denmark. This is a well-informed person, so please make sure that he doesn't leave with information. Take it all from him. If you have any questions, write them all down. We'll have time to ask him. Let's give it up for Dr. Elvis.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. I'm hoping my presentation will not be too technical. So when it gets too technical, you can flash your hand and then we'll try and be a bit more non-technical, because for what we're going to talk about, it's hard to avoid the technical bits when you talk about monitoring, and then it's also a bit hard to not talk about the technical bit when we think of what early warning systems we want to put in place. But to fit into what we're doing today, where we're trying to think of early warning systems and the things that can happen in the wake of emergencies. What we usually don't think about is air pollution or air quality. There can be an emergency with air pollution or air quality, but in fact, there can be. And one of the things that most of us are not aware is that, how many of you have heard of the London Great Smoke? So in 1953, there was a smog in London, basically because it was winter and a lot of people were burning coal. And if my presentation can be up, I can remember it, but please don't let me do it out of my head. Thank you. So in 1952, what happened was that due to winter cold, there was a lot of burning of coal, and what that resulted in was pollution from people's houses. Thank you very much. Pollution from people's houses. It ended up creating what you would call smog. And what that resulted in particulate matter 2.5 and SO2 levels elevating to the extent that we had about 12,000 deaths at the time. And one would say that when there's flood in Accra, the worst flood that I think I can remember was the June 3rd one. And I think we had about almost between 500 to 1,000 people being affected or dying. This is 12,000 people. There can be an emergency that is worse than this. And when you think about it, often when we think of early warning systems, when we think of emergencies, we think of the flood, we think of the sea level rise, we think of the Keita issues. But we don't think there's a problem of air pollution being able to do that. There's also an incident in Delhi, and this is not even past. It's an annual cycle, in that there are periods that if you have friends in India, they tell them no school, don't go out, stay in your house, because the air pollution levels get so bad that it's not appropriate for you to be outdoors. What that usually happens is that the AQI, which is the air quality index, goes beyond 500. What it means is that even for someone who is healthy, if you have any condition like asthma or anything, you would have an instant attack. And so Delhi has a system in place where every year they have to give a smog alert and tell people, do not go out. There is the Beijing issue that happened in 2013, where they also had their smog issues with it impacting over 500 people having respiratory health issues in the city. There's the Los Angeles one, and this is caused mainly by cars and sunlight. What it does is that it creates photochemical smog from ground level of tropospheric ozone and NOx. What mainly happens is that people keep getting chronic asthma. One interesting thing which I didn't include here is that Los Angeles in recent times has also had what you would call wildfires, where due to the high impact of the sun, most of us don't see that because it's a bit new to us. But in Europe, the landforms and land structures are not designed to the kind of heat we have here. So when the sun shines for a certain period of time, the rocks literally crack up and they spark fire. When the vegetation is dry and these rocks crack up, it starts all fires. Last year or last 2 years, they had whole neighborhood and residents being burnt. There were even very popular areas last year that got burnt. And people were like, oh, these are very rich neighborhoods. They shouldn't be burning. But they are burning because of the impact of what happens when there's a lot of sunshine, which is a little related to climate change more than anything. There is what we have here, which may not be an emergency yet, and that's why these things are important for us to know. We have our annual Hamatans, and yes, it comes and it goes, but one of the things we cannot deny is that even for the most healthiest of people, when there's Hamatan, you still have to deal with catarrh at a more regular interval than you would on a normal day. It means that if we do not think of it as an emergency yet, we shouldn't wait for it to get to that level where people are dying from the pollution level from our Hamatan. Just to give a brief context of what happens in Accra, our general air quality level, you realize that Accra has had very high pollutant level for particulate matter, within a range of 2 to 10 times higher than what WHO recommends. The recommended WHO level is 10 microgram per meter cube. 10 times of it is going to somewhere around 100. And when you go to places like Kandishi, the last EPA data analysis they did showed places having 600 microgram per meter cube. That is more than 10 times. And so pollution levels in Accra have been high. It's one of the environmental risks that's been responsible for 8% of the total mortality in the country. It actually increases the burden of disease on vulnerable groups, here being pregnant women, children, and the older generation. There's an economic cost to it. According to the World Bank, the cost is $2.5 billion for the level of air pollution that we have in the country. And what this usually means is that who is responsible for air pollution monitoring or air quality management? We do have the EPA as a statutory responsible person, but it's not just dependent on EPA, it's also dependent on us. It's also dependent on the other factors and sectors that contribute to the air pollution. To come down to what we want to do today, I would spend a bit of time talk about what are the ways we can monitor the air that we have, and then I'll spend a bit of time to go into the types of monitoring that are there, and then we'll talk about how we can interpret it, how we can analyze it. I'll probably throw in a few tools that we can use. You can check them online, and then take some questions. Hopefully, that should help us to wrap our head around how we can set up an early emergency system. So air quality devices, they are mainly designed to detect air pollution in the air. So if you were to put an air quality monitoring device in this room, what you would want that device to do is be able to tell you the level of air pollution for a specific pollutant. And so what that means is that it should have a certain ability to do that, to be able to tell you what pollutants are there and what levels they are at the end of the day. The interesting thing is that in general, you can categorize the monitors into 3 classes. We have them based on their types of pollutants they are able to measure. So they are air quality monitors that only measure particulate matter, or they only measure ozone, they only measure NO2, they only measure tropospheric and sulfur dioxide. And then there are air quality monitors that are based on the sensor technology. There are over 6 different sensor technology types. I will try and talk about the different types of pollutants. There are various types of it. And then there's also the sensor technology. There are different types of sensor technology. The sensor technology basically looks at what kind of technology is being used to design the sensor. What that means is that it tells you what it can do, it tells you the accuracy level, and it also tells you the cost of it. Because there's something which is called the reference grade monitor. The technology, the reference grade monitor, which makes it cost about $65,000 for a single device. It's not the same technology as a low-cost sensor from Clarity that will cost you $700. So there are differences in technology that has its implications at the end of the day. There's also application. The sensor that I would use if I want to monitor air pollution at Shiashi by the roadside is different from the sensor I would use if I want to monitor air pollution in this room. It's also different from the technology, the sensor I would use if I want to monitor air pollution by people who are doing certain kind of works. I'll give a typical example. For most miners who go into the underground mine, you wear a sensor on you to detect 2 kinds of pollutants, methane and radon. Reason being that radon is radioactive, it can affect your health. Methane, because methane is not only bad for the environment, but methane is very dangerous for miners, because if you have high levels of methane, it means you have low amount of oxygen. It also means you are in a flammable environment. The slightest spark and the whole tunnel will light up, and you will die. And so there are sensors that are worn on people, on children, on miners. We'll look into that as well. So just go into the type of air pollutants. There are 4 main types of air pollutants. There are the primary pollutants. These pollutants are directly emitted into the air. It means that if you do a certain activity, it can let them be suspended or it can release them into the air. And there are secondary pollutants that only come about when there's a certain chemical reaction. And so once you leave those pollutants in the air and there's a certain amount of sunlight, a certain amount of heat or energy, it can bring about those pollutants. And then we have the popular greenhouse gases. These are gases that contribute to climate change. And they become very important to us in the wake of our plus 1.5 and plus 2.0 heating of the air. And then we have biological pollutants. These are pollutants that come from biological sources. We will look into what they entail and what they involve. And the popular one, which most of us still have a good memory of, is COVID-19. COVID-19 is actually an air pollutant. It's a biological air pollutant. In that it's airborne, when you breathe it in, you have an impact And so I'm trying to let us cover as much as possible all the different types of air pollutants away from the conventional ones you hear and know about, basically. So to go into the type of air pollutants, we have the most common one everybody talks about, which is particulate matter. Particulate matter is made up of 4 different aspects. There's particulate matter 1, which is ultra fine. So what you see here, I don't know if I have the data. Good. So what you see here is a single strand of hair that's been zoomed in about 1,000 times. So when you take a single strand of hair, the ladies will be able to do that better than the guys. But don't worry. If you take a single strand of hair, that's the size of it. You can divide that hair into, and that's the size of a particle. When you go to the Labadi beach or La Boma beach or whatever beach, and you take a single grain of sand, that is how it looks like. It's almost as big as a strand of hair. Just zoomed in like 1,000 times. Particulate matter 10 is when you divide that hair diameter into 5. The one piece of it is what particulate matter 10 is made up of. When you now divide it further into about 10 times, when you divide that 5 by 10, you will get particulate matter 1. It has a size of less than 1 microgram per meter cube. You don't need to worry about the size or the units. I'm trying to make sure we're not getting too technical. If you also understand the phrase, it also adds on to your knowledge. And so what has come up over the years is that a lot of attention has been given to particulate matter 1 and 2.5. And the reason is very simple. You may think a grain of sand is small, but particulate matter 1 is so small that it feels like nothing. What happens is that when you breathe it in, it goes into your lungs. The normal thing we know biology from whatever we're taught is that your hair and your lungs filter and it comes out. But particulate matter 1 is so fine that when it gets into your trachea, it actually passes the barrier and goes into your bloodstream. Because it's so fine, it's not filtered out. What that means is that it can cause stroke when it gets into your brain. Because it's not blood, it can cause a blood clot since it's a particle. So the impact of air pollution that is known by a lot of people is mainly due to what particulate matter 1 and 2.5 does in the body. It can result in fertility issues, it can result in stroke, it can result in high blood pressure, diabetes, and a whole lot of other issues because it's able to go into your bloodstream. It means that as much as possible, you want to prevent it from going into your body before you even try to think your body's going to get it out at the end of the day. And then there's the black soot or black carbon, which if you follow any truck on the roads of Accra, you will see it at the exhaust come out like a big plume. And that is also quite dangerous because it's as a result of incomplete burning of fossil fuel or biomass. In Accra, we burn a lot of waste. So that's one type of primary air pollutant. We also have the gaseous pollutants. These are made up of some of them you've heard of, some of them you've not. So we have the carbon monoxide. I will not touch on the other ones, but mainly carbon monoxide, sulfur oxide. Sulfur oxide because sulfur can be in the form of nitric oxide or nitrogen dioxide, and these are all pollutants. You have the sulfur dioxide, and then there's what we call VOCs, volatile organic compounds. They are made up of methane, benzene, formaldehyde, and toluene. This is what a lot of us don't know. We get exposed to nitrogen dioxide from burning, from carbon monoxide, from the home combustion we do, and then from VOCs. VOCs because every time you pass by a filling station, what you don't know is that the petrol that's being dispensed emits a lot of VOCs. It has benzene coming out, it has formaldehyde coming out, it has toluene coming out. And so on a normal day, if anybody works at a gas filling station or a petrol filling station for more than 5 years, they will have a health impact. Whether they are aware of it or not, if they are not protecting themselves by a nose mask or some gas mask, they will have some health impact on them at the end of the day. There is also ammonia and then there's hydrogen sulfide. Hydrogen sulfide is very interesting, and I will use the biological source, which can be quite funny. Every time you fart as a human being, what allows you to smell the fart is the presence of hydrogen sulfide. If there's no hydrogen sulfide in your fart, you will not smell it. So when something smells, your body is able to perceive the smell because of the amount of hydrogen sulfide in it. And so you pass by a landfill site and you can smell it. And there's odor because there's a high amount of hydrogen sulfide in there at the end of the day. So mostly sewage, industrial processes, and other decomposition processes release hydrogen sulfide. There's the last category of primary pollutants, which are toxic metals. These are only a few of them. I can't list all of them, but these are the popular ones that have a lot of prominence. What happens is that any metal you know of can be suspended in the air when it becomes fine enough. When I say fine, if you grind aluminium, there will be particles of aluminium that will be suspended in the air. And so often there's lead, mercury, arsenic, cadmium, nickel. These toxic metals are getting attention because they are not just primary pollutants that can be easily released into the air. All of them are also carcinogenic. It means that when you get exposed to them, aside from being pollutants, they can also cause cancer in the body. And so often you go by a welding place and the guy is only more concerned about his eyes. So he has that black thing on his eyes. But what he's not concerned about is the level of toxic metals that are around him from all their soldering with aluminium and iron and other things, which have a health effect on him. And so just to let us know some of the primary pollutants. There is the secondary pollutants, which are mainly made up of what we call tropospheric ozone or ground level ozone. And then there's nitric acid, sulfuric acid, secondary organic aerosols. Aerosols are the most basic way I can tell is that anything that you can find that has a certain amount of release can be an aerosol. So when I say release, when you take your fabric, you see the links that can be on the fabric surface. That comes off. That's considered an aerosol. When you have a carpet, when you sweep the carpet, what comes up of it is an aerosol. Aerosols are more of an indoor pollutant, but a lot of people are not aware of it. So it's been said that when you have plants in your house, the plants give you oxygen. They take out carbon dioxide. But what they also do is that when you have too many plants, you introduce a lot of aerosols into your room. So there's a balance of how many plants you should have in an enclosed space, basically. There is a peroxyacetyl nitrate, which is a photochemical smoke component. It means that when this kind of chemical is released, over time the sun energy makes it become smoke, basically. And then there's the greenhouse gases. I did say there were four classes of primary pollutants. So greenhouse gas is the third of them. We have our popular carbon dioxide, we have our popular methane, we have the nitrous oxides, and then CFCs, chlorofluorocarbons, which are banned, but interestingly, that's not fridges in Ghana that have them. If you go to the past, you find a fridge that has a CFC as its refrigerant. When we say refrigerant, it's the gas that allows the fridge to cool. And so basically the technology is that as CFCs move in the tubes with regular warm air, over time, it begins to cool things in the fridge. And that gas movement is what makes what you have as a fridge or refrigerator or a freezer work, basically. There are other new gases that have been developed, so this is no more useful, because often what is said is that when that gas is released, it's a very highly polluting greenhouse gas, basically. And then we have the biological pollutants. These are pollens. A lot of you have allergies. You have allergies to plants, to flowers because of pollens. And so there's mold also. There are people that when they go into a room and there's mold on the bed sheets, in the walls, they get huge reactions to it. Molds are air pollutants. They are biological air pollutants because there's what we call spores. The molds grow and they release spores. The spores are their reproductive components that when they land on a moist surface, they can grow. So they grow, produce more spores, grow, produce more spores. So the bread that is not kept well, the bed sheets, the walls that are damp, can produce pollens and mold spores. And then we have bacterial viruses, which are airborne pathogens. So you have the popular flu, the popular COVID-19, you have the ones in the past like H1N1 and all the other H1 whatever that are there. These are biological air pollutants that are there. They are primary pollutants, they are part of the type of pollutants that you can find. And then we have dust mites and animal dampers. These are indoor allergens. there's one thing a lot of people don't like to think of. The ladies understand it better than the guys. In that ladies know I should use a cleanser on my face and I should use a moisture on my face and I should do all of that. And guys think it's not necessary. The reason is that if you take someone's face when they walk outside and come back indoors, that what you call dust mites, when you look on the face with a microscope, these are literally, mites are biological, they move, they are so small you can't see them, but they are on people's faces. And so, if you don't wash your face, if you don't wash your hands, you're carrying mites around you. And that can also go into your lungs and be a pollutant, basically. So, to come to it, in terms of what equipment are used to monitor primary air pollutants, you would have the popular one which I know of as what I've listed here. It's not exhaustive. There are other devices that can be used. But we do have the Aerocore S500 that has a particulate matter sensor. It has an exchangeable head. It can have different sensors to measure SO2, NO2, and others. And then you have the AQM65. The AQM65, if you went to buy an AQM65, just to give you the financial bet, you'll be probably expecting to spend about $265,000 to be able to get one of this. What that does is that it measures a whole range of pollutants from primary to secondary and greenhouse gases, but not biological, and then weather conditions, so temperature, wind speed, and then you will get humidity as well. But that's a type of device that you would use for a primary pollutant. There's also secondary pollutants. Secondary pollutants, we refer to the ones that are, you would find them after something happens or after there's been some reaction. And so these secondary pollutants can also be measured with some of the primary pollutant devices, or you will find out that there are these devices that people carry with a long metallic probe, and they are used for both secondary pollutants and also used for greenhouse gases. And so they'll be able to measure other gases like carbon monoxide, they'll be able to measure some of the greenhouse gases like methane, like carbon monoxide, like CFCs and others in that way. And then there's devices for measuring biological pollutants. There is the one that is here which is able to measure for viruses and bacteria. And so they will be able to tell you if there's a COVID-19 air in an area because they have sensors in them that can detect it. And then there are the ones that are used for measuring pollen. And so when someone has lived in an area and constantly complains of asthma attacks and the reason is pollen, what most doctors will do is not just prescribe medicine, they will also get somebody to measure the level of pollen in that area. Not in this part of the world, but in most Western areas. They will measure the level of pollen and see how you can reduce the pollen exposure in there. So there are equipment for measuring all the types of pollutants that are there. Some may be here, which you can find, some may not be here, but just to say that they are available, you can get them, and it can tell you the level of pollutants when you want to measure them. To be able to design an early warning system, you should be able to know what is safe and what is not safe. And in doing that, if you do not have some measurements of what the pollutant is, you can't begin to even say, oh, these are safe levels or these are unsafe levels at the end of the day. We don't go to the sensor type. So we said that the type of equipment you can use can be categorized into 3 main classes. Who can tell us what it is before we go on? I like to teach a lot, so don't worry, I'll ask you questions. Can anybody tell us the types of classes we said the sensors can be categorized into? Gentlemen in glasses. Yes. Maybe you help us. We said there were 3.
I think, let me just give a wrong answer so that you can feel comfortably give a wrong answer. So it's like, one is indoor, outdoor.
Okay. That's fine. Any other answer?
Yeah.
There are no wrong answers,
Yeah.
but when we get a right one, we'll type it. Yes.
Anyway, I have something in mind, but it says you said it's like what I have
So we just say they are based on the type of pollutant, they are based on the sensor technology, and then they are based on the application. These are the 3 ways you can categorize the equipment that are used to measure air pollution. So we've dealt with the type of pollutants. We've heard about the primary, secondary, greenhouse gas, and the biological pollutants. I'm going to now talk about the sensor technology, which are what kind of sensor technologies are used in air quality equipment, basically. So we have the very first one, which is called electrochemical sensors. These have high accuracy, and mainly for gases, they are used for industrial purposes. What they do is that they are designed like these. It has an electrode base, and then it has an electrochemical part. So what happens is that if the gas interacts with the electrical base of it, it creates a certain reaction, and is able to then measure how much of the gas is in the air. And so they are very accurate at the end of the day. There's also what we call the metal oxide semiconductors. What they do is that the semiconductor is exposed to, the metal oxide semiconductor is exposed to the air, and if there's a certain type of pollutant, it would react to it. So the level of the metal oxide reaction will tell the equipment that this is how much of it is in there. Like the way we talk about when you have oxygen in a container, the amount of oxygen will tell how long something will burn. And so based on the duration of what something will burn, you can be able to tell how much oxygen is in there, basically, by that basic knowledge. It's the same way, only that this time, we have a metal oxide semiconductor that's being exposed to the gas. And so based on the reaction of that metal oxide, you can be able to tell the amount of that gas that is in an area or that is being monitored. This is used a lot in what we know as the low-cost sensors. And so you will have the clarity, you have the air nodes, you have most of what a lot of us have seen or heard about being called low-cost sensors. Because developing these are not as expensive as when you're developing an electrochemical sensor at the end of the day. And then we have the NDIR. NDIR is non-reactive infrared rays. What it does is that it has this design, basically. So there's a infrared and there's a gas cell. And so based on the infrared and the gas cell that is there, the amount of a gas that will come into contact with the infrared and the gas cell is able to tell the quantity of it. And that's how that works. It's called NDR, they are highly accurate, they are mainly used for CO2 at the end of the day. And then we have the optical laser sensors. They are usually called laser counters. They are quite popular, and so you see devices for air pollution that have like a probe, it has an outlet and an inlet. How many of us have seen that? So you see an inlet at the top and an outlet on the side or below it. What it does is that in between the top inlet and the down outlet, there is a laser counter in there. So when the gas goes in through the inlet, it goes with the pollutant. When it gets to the laser counter, as many particles cross the laser boundary, the laser counts it. So it's able to tell this amount of pollutants across this boundary. Because of the way it's designed, it's able to measure them in either parts per million or microgram per meter cube and tell you the level of pollution, and then it leaves. And so they usually would have a little pump that is moving the air through it in order to allow air not to go back in a reversible way. And so how many of you have seen the purple air sensors? Has anybody seen the purple air sensors? It has a little fan on the corner, and then it allows it to move air through it. There are also other sensors that use the optical laser scattering sensor technology. There's the photoionization detector, which is for VOCs. Good, so the air beam has the same technology. I will come to this when I talk about the application, but in terms of technology, I'm trying to let you understand that even though I tell you the sensors can be categorized into three, you can have a sensor that is measuring a primary air pollutant, that is using a certain technology, and that is of a certain application. I hope that we can all agree to that. So this is a wearable sensor in terms of application, but it is measuring a primary pollutant in terms of types of pollutant, and the technology it's using here is an optical sensor. So it has in it a part that is working as an inlet and a part that is working as an outlet and a fan that is running. And so if you listen to it, you will hear a certain sound like because there's a pump that is moving air from one side as an inlet and taking out air as an outlet. And then it has a mini laser counter that will now tell you how much of particulate matter 1 or 10 is in there. So what this laser counter does is that the laser counter is able to tell the size of the particle that is counting. Do you get it? And so it's able to tell you whether it's particulate matter 1 or particulate matter 2.5 or particulate matter 10. Based on the diameter of it, it's able to tell you. So once it's done counting, it will now categorize it and tell you, for the air in this place, this is how much PM1, this is how much PM2.5, and this is how much PM10 are in there. Are we all okay? Okay. I will just pause here briefly for questions before I go on, so it doesn't become too much of an information overload. All of you are, you say you are sharp, so okay, please.
This is
Yeah.
Okay, it's an input. It's about the winter smoke in New Delhi. So I sent a message to a friend there, and he said Delhi is bordered by the states like Haryana and Punjab, and these states are wheat-producing regions. And after the harvest, many farmers burn the leftover crops as a quick and inexpensive method of clearing their fields. All of the government has introduced incentives and schemes promoting eco-friendly alternatives. The alternatives are time-consuming and labor-intensive, so they still go on to burn because it's more convenient.
So basically, what happens is that we do that in Ghana, where people clear their fields by they light fire into it and they burn it. Only that these are large agricultural fields, and so when you set fire into it, it produces a lot of particulate matter. It produces a lot of NO2 because, mind you, these are biological. So there's nitrogen in them. The nitrogen in the plant will react with air and produce NO2 and NOx. Once they do that, it gets blown to Delhi, and Delhi's air gets clogged up. So periodically it puts out alerts to say, for the next 2 days, don't go to school, don't go to work, stay in your homes. And it's a very difficult way to live, but they live like that because they've not been able to deal with the air pollution that is happening. And that's a typical case of where air pollution can be an emergency. It's not just something that is making you get catarrh or get flu. It's something that can bring your life to a standstill when it becomes an emergency, basically. Thank you. So, yes, you have one.
Okay. So, mine is a bit funny.
Okay.
I talked about flatulence. I'll be damned if I don't ask a question.
Come on, yeah.
Can flatulence be a form of air pollution in certain circumstances?
I'm going to say it this way. For something to become an air pollutant, it has to be of a certain, and that's what we're talking about there. It has to be of a certain quantity. I can't imagine someone being able to release so much that it becomes a pollutant. I don't want to imagine, but just to say that from the normal average human being, you wouldn't be able to give so much flatulence that it will be considered an air pollutant because like what we say, there's a certain level of emission that is safe. And we say it's safe because when it's released, it can easily mix up with the air and not have a biological effect or a health effect. But when it's difficult, so for those of you who know biology, there's what we call carrying capacity, and the reason why we celebrate something like called Earth Day, because the Earth has used all the resources it needs to be able to self-sustain itself. So when you release pollutants that the environment cannot consume it, then we say it's a problem, basically. So I doubt if you have such capabilities, I don't know I doubt if anybody can do that for it to become. So we're going to go on to the last bit, the last category, which is the application. When we think of the application, we think of how we are using the sensor as a way of categorizing it. It doesn't mean that the sensor cannot be measuring primary. It doesn't mean that the sensor cannot use a certain technology. It just means where we're using it. If you do take this sensor, which is an indoor air quality, which is a wearable, it's a wearable sensor, we'll come to it, and you put it at Shiashi. Shiashi has too large a space, too many pollutants, that it wouldn't be able to tell you the accurate level of pollution. And so we have what we call the indoor air pollutants. These are usually plugged, or they are like watches. They'll tell you the level of CO and oxygen and particulate and humidity in your room. And they are usually sold online or on Amazon, where people will plug them or they have rechargeable batteries. They look something like these. These are different kinds of indoor air pollutants, air quality sensors, basically. And they are used sometimes by people who have babies, because when your baby is exposed to polluted air, it has serious health impact. Or when you're pregnant and you're exposed to polluted air, it's been established that you can have miscarriage. And so a lot of people who are in the vulnerable group use these as a way to measure how they should protect themselves at the end of the day. And then there's the outdoor air quality sensors. These outdoors are designed to be installed. So you see some of them on traffic lights, on buildings. You would see some of them in cages. And that's what they are designed. They have an outdoor structure to allow them to withstand the weather, to also allow them to measure over a large area, to be able to tell you. And so the biology that's been expanded is that if you put a certain sensor, it can cover a radius of between 5 kilometers to 15 kilometers. And the air quality level it will measure will be representative of that area that is measuring. So these are mainly the outdoor, and that's a typical example. So you have an inlet up here, and you will have an outlet somewhere down there where the air goes out, as I described. This is a multi-sensor, a multi-pollutant sensor, because it would have the PM and would have other electrochemical sensors in there to tell you for other gases as well, basically. And then what you would see are usually the rain gauge, the humidity, the wind, and then the temperature sensors also coming in there. And then we have the wearables, where these are called Airbeam. I think this is Airbeam 3. It's designed by UN Habitat. They are wearable, you can attach them to your belt, your school bag, and basically to tell you that if I want to know the pollution when I walk from my junction to my house, you strap this one on, and at the end of the day, you can check the pollution is measured and be able to say, if that is pollution in the air, that is the pollution you are being exposed to. So it's used for what we call personal exposure monitoring, because the pollution in the air is what you're also breathing in and out, basically. And it's a good way to use it. There are different kinds of wearables. There are multiple designs of them. There are some of them where it has a school bag kind of, which you can find online. And then there are ones like this. There are even ones that you can pin to your shirt and then it will still do the measuring for you. So in terms of the type of equipment, these are the 3 categories. These are the subcategories in those 3. We're going to do a little post type of air quality monitoring, and I'll do a little test. There's no prize for this one. So I'm going to say a pollutant, and you tell me whether it's primary, secondary, greenhouse, or is a biological or toxic metal. I'm telling you the categories because I'm not going to ask. If I have, say, silica in the air, what kind of pollutant is it? Do we know what silica is? Yes. It's a metal. So what is silica? So that's a confusion. You're looking at the name, but there's also a confusion because in reality, silica is used to make glass. So just breaking it down so you can relate to it. Silica is used to make glass. Who can tell us what is used to make glass? What? Thank you. So the most commonest silica you find around is sand particles. Sand particles is silica. If you heat sand particles so much, it melts together and it becomes glass. So the Aboso glass factory is because they have a certain rock that when you easily heat it, you get a certain kind of glass, basically. So silica is the sand. Sand is silica. It's different from silicon. Silicon has a similar name, but silicon is actually from a plastic derivative. So they are not really related, even though their names sound similar. Silicon is a plastic produced. It's used in the medical field or cosmetic surgery. It has nothing to do with silicon. But they have common names. So when we say for benzene is what kind of pollutant? Yeah, benzene is a chemical. It has a 6-chain carbon. Yeah, don't worry, you know your chemistry. We know. But what kind of pollutant is benzene? It's a greenhouse gas. That's correct. I don't have the price, so don't worry. You get accolades. Okay, let's take one other one. I have black suit. Black suit is what kind of? Black suits or black carbon or suits is what kind of thing? I didn't hear you. Or you didn't say? Okay, action that can be taken. Whether people should stay indoors like in Delhi, or they should wear a mask, or they should stay in enclosed areas. And what is the activity that should happen? There are days, I remember in Beijing, they stopped car movement for almost a period of time because of the level of pollution they had recorded. Or they said only odd-even cars, odd-numbered cars should go into the city center, or even-numbered cars should go into the city center. That helped them regulate it. So it can result in a number of actions, basically. And then there's review and updates. These should be designed in a way that you can revise them on either a daily, weekly, monthly, annual basis in order for them to be relevant when you do set up these early warning systems and alert systems for your use, basically. There's forecasting models. I won't touch too much on them, but forecasting models are similar to what I talked about with interpolation, where you can use your monitored data to be able to do prediction of pollution peaks, to do public health alerts, to do government mitigation, and also to prepare health systems for what is coming. So during Harmattan, most health facilities have one. So I would say yes, the regulatory requirement from EPA for most industries, basically mines, manufacturing, even though this is not about air pollution, so let me just answer. You do have equipment that have a combination of noise. So the AQM65 is one of such devices. It's what you would call an environmental complete station. It has air quality, environment factors or weather factors, humidity, and then it has noise built in there. And so it will measure your air pollution, your noise, and then your weather conditions. So you have all the environmental conditions together. But often you will realize most equipment are either focused on air based on the three types of sensor types or technology or the pollutant. And then you have your noise monitoring equipment. There are different classes of noise monitoring equipment. There's the top class, IEE +1 standard, and then there's the low cost ones, which are +2 or +5 standards. So then yes, when it comes to noise as well, there are standards in the equipment and what you can use for, basically. Yes.
Thank you. Number 2, please. Yes.
Okay, that's a wonderful presentation, and in fact, I've learned a lot. Initially, thought pollution is what we literally see with our eyes when we see smoke and that stuff. And we think that is the pollution. But with the presentation that you've given me, you've broadened my horizon to the extent that everywhere we find ourselves, there is one pollution in there. Now, looking at, the primary pollution, secondary, the greenhouse, the biological, and then the other ones. Talking about the equipment, in regards to the collaboration, the calibration of the equipment, because each and everywhere you find yourself, there is some kind of pollution in there. How do you make sure that you calibrate your equipment very well, that you have quality in terms of the data?
So I'll just talk about what we know, and then I'll go into the more technical bit. This is a type of low-cost sensor. It uses the technology where it's a metal oxide and all of that. What happens is that the metal oxides are designed to have a life cycle. So usually this will run for about maximum 3 years. And then what the manufacturer says is that after 3 years, send me the sensor, I would fix a new sensor in there and send it back to you. or if the local sensor has a problem, if it's clarity, they would ask you to ship it back to them, they will fix it and then send it back to you. In very advanced monitoring equipment, there's what we call a calibration protocol. Calibration protocol requires you to heat up the equipment for about 15 minutes before you start monitoring. If you intend to calibrate it, you need to put in place certain measures, and then you will now bring in your calibration equipment and use that to calibrate it. What the calibration equipment does is that it tells the sensor that this is what you should record when there's no pollutant in the environment. So based on that protocol that you follow, you'll be able to calibrate your equipment. Most equipment that are used in the industry, in the environmental field, in mining, in power, what they have is what we call calibration certificates. The calibration certificate tells whoever is using the equipment the last time that equipment was calibrated by the manufacturer and the next time that is required to be calibrated. If you sell an equipment that it has an expired calibration certificate, the results from that equipment will not be used. So one of the checks in monitoring in the industrial area or in the professional area is that you should have a calibration equipment certificate for the device you're using basically. So, yeah.
Thank you for your presentation. There are many new activities that you made mention of that also contribute to air pollution. And I want to find out at what point can you say there's an air pollution disaster? And if there are also measures that have been put in place to alert or inform the general public about an upcoming air pollution disaster. Thank you.
Thank you. So, fortunately for us in Ghana, we've not had an air pollution disaster. I have not heard of it, but what I would be able to say is that, so let me use the classical one which we all know, which is COVID-19. COVID-19 was maybe a classic air pollution disaster, where the government literally said, do not go out, do not stay in crowded places, leave a 5-meter gap between you and the next human being, because the government wants to reduce your exposure to the airborne COVID-19. But if you go to places like India, you go to places like China, they have had air pollution disasters where they had to shut down for a while for the air to be cleaner so before people can come out. What kind of measures can be put in place? There's a popular EPA air quality alert. How many of you have seen it? Okay, so a number of you have seen it. EPA releases an alert on their Twitter page on a weekly basis or on a daily basis, where they tell you the air quality in Accra, whether it's safe, whether it's hazardous, whether it's severe. They will put it out there and they will tell you what to do to protect yourself. Yes, also on the Citizens app, there's that as well, which you can see. There are also, you can go to Acura, you can go to PDQ, you can go to Breathe Accra as well, where you will see the air pollution level at a certain district within the city. So there's that as well. I think there's a last one, yes, or last two.
Thank you. My first question was, you spoke about limits to the number of plants that you can have in an enclosed area. I wanted to know, is it for open areas or for rooms? I know for rooms, maybe people would like to go indoor plants. Maybe there are limits to indoor plants that I can have in a particular space. Or you're talking about, let's say, in my 100 by 100, what do you call it, plot of land, and I have quite a number of mangoes, coconuts, guava, everything there. Is that what you're talking about? I want clarity on that. And then the next one would be, I think you've touched on it a bit, but just in Ghana, what are some of the sensors we currently have that are being used for monitoring? And in terms of data, what are some of the sites in Ghana I can go to have real-time data to influence my movements or to advise myself on going out?
Thank you. When I mentioned the limits, I was talking about indoor spaces. And so when you have a area, there's a limit of plants you can have. And usually you're encouraged to open your windows at a certain time to sort of refresh the air. So I'm not talking about outdoor, but from an agronomical perspective, even outdoor spaces, there's a certain number of plants you can put on a certain area of land, in that you'll be told to do a 2-meter spacing and 5-meter spacing. But I was specifically referring to indoor areas in this case. Talking about where you can go to, there's the EPA Twitter handle, there's a Citizens app, there is IQ Air, you can just Google it, there's IQ Air, there's OpenAQ, there's breatheaccra.org. These are all places where you can find real-time air quality data for Accra and Ghana. So you can go there and you get data, you get information at the end of the day. And I think that's all the questions, right?
There's a last follow-up from here.
Okay, hi, please, I wanted to know your insights on a question I have. So do you think which is more effective, public education or the word is not coming. Wait, public education or enforcement, exactly, yeah.
When it comes, can you add a bit of context when it comes to what specifically?
Okay, so maybe the government enforcing laws, not enforcing per se, but putting strict laws in place that this and this. This should be what we should do to reduce the air pollution. Or we should go out there and talk to the people and see if they would actually do things for us to reduce the air pollution. Which do you think is best?
I don't know if what I'm thinking is what I think. You know, I know for open burning, there are some regulations that we are not supposed to burn in open areas, and for vehicles to have emission levels, and all. We can see that those rules or those bylaws are not being followed to the core. Would you say that at this point, there are supposed to be education to the people, are supposed to do enforcement when it comes to those two scenarios?
So I would say this in general. You have to do both. And I'm saying you have to do both because aside you having the laws that you're enforcing, you also have to educate the people. The reason is that you could have the laws that are there, and just like you mentioned, which was what I was going to go back to, that having a law is good, but also letting people understand why the law is needed, what happens when the law is actually adhered to, the kind of protection it brings them, and the benefit they get from it, is what you will gain from the education bit. And even beyond that, it shouldn't just be education, you should also add on advocacy, where you are using multiple tools to get people to understand why they have to do what they're doing, why it is important to do what you're asking them not to do, and then the legal remits when they do not go by that. In Ghana, we've not had a lot of good examples of enforcement. However, it's for us to get to the place where we do what we do with this one thing. And I'll tell you, there's one classic, wonderful example we have, which has worked since its inception, is the law on smoking. If any of us should lit a cigarette here, none of us is going to wait for a policeman to come and tell the person who's lit a cigarette to turn it off. You'll be surprised what will happen, and I'll tell you this example. I had a Danish colleague from University of Copenhagen. They came to Ghana, went to Makola, 2 white Danish people. The lady decides to take out a cigarette in Makola and lit it, and start to smoke. And this is her narrating it to me, because I didn't come to Ghana with them. This is when she's come back to Denmark. It was like, they were so traumatized because this old woman walks up to them, takes the cigarette from her mouth, puts it on the floor, steps on it, and does this in their face.
Wow.
Yes. And that's a classical example of how people have come to understand that, yes, there's a law on smoking in Ghana. In Ghana is the only country, or one of the countries, that every space is non-smoking unless they put it there that is smoking. If you go to Europe, it's the other way around. Everywhere is a smoking area unless they tell you that this is a non-smoking area. And everybody obeys that law. You won't go to Makola and see anybody just walking and smoking. When you go to Europe, you see people smoking on the streets. So when you come to Ghana, you would think nobody smokes because hardly will you see anybody openly smoking, because we've come to understand the law. We have become the police to the law ourselves. That when someone decides to smoke, we decide, not here, not near me, you can't smoke here. And that is how we've taken this very serious. I feel that is the best example of where we want to get to. When we think of all the other...
Downstairs, okay. The hotel is having lunch downstairs at 12 and would have closed after 1. But looking at the time, we're not seeing the possibility of us joining them downstairs to do that. So we're trying to make options for us to have our food packed. So if you're comfortable with that, there is a list of items on the menu today. What I would just need you to do is just tick on the side to what you want. Please don't take it so much that you take all the space. Just like a tally table. Just tick, 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 tick. So there's plain rice and the others, you will see it. So each table will tick, next table will tick, next table will tick. When they are done, we would give you coupons so that you can take your food afterwards. Does that sound okay for all of us? Can I hear yes? Good. Thank you so much. So I'm just going to start with this table. And when folks join you, just prompt us so you can get them to something. So carry on with the event as the ticket is going on. If you need to research to see the food you are choosing, please do that. It has some very interesting names. So yes, say don't judge a book by its cover, but so you have to judge by its name. So I really hope that you're able to do. How many of us are able to download the Ever Better app? Only those wearing blues are raising their hands. Okay, you downloaded today. Amazing. How many of us are able to download? I think there's special gifts for those who downloaded to the Lord.
Yes, yes. I have their numbers and their names.
Okay. Can we see their hands again?
I'm still downloading.
Okay, please download. So Evan Better is for everybody. Okay, so once you download, you get all of this information and we've learned what is going on and what we must do to keep track. Do we have our next people here? I think we had Dr. Elvis say a lot about air quality, what's going on, how to monitor. I wanted to find out, Lord, the sensor he was holding, is it accessible for every citizen of Ghana?
Yes, please. It's accessible for everyone. You just have to come to the guy office.
The guy office, are we paying for it?
No, it's on lease.
It's on lease for how long?
For a reasonable amount of time, because maybe someone else, even though we have a limited capacity now, we cannot take it for a longer period.
At this point, I think he has to use the microphone because you're all interested. Please, can you come here? So you see that cute thing that Dr. Elvis was holding? He's saying that you can get one on the lease, not for dash. So please continue.
So it can be used for research purposes. It can also be used for your personal leisure. If you want to find things out yourself, you can. The pathway is you first take the training on the platform. So there's a run even around tracker training. So you just go to the Better website and it will take you to the training. So after you are done with the training, they are now accessible to you. You know how to operate the sensor. Then you come to the guy office, you sign in the forms, and then it's being given to you. You sign, you take a picture of your face in case if you want to run away with it. You add your ID and everything. Then we use it out to you. You use it in safe conditions and bring it back in safe conditions.
All right, thank you very much. Me, I'll come to Gaio office for it. This Gaio is located at Lakeside, 8 Red Box Street. We'll write it down here so you can always, or you can take Lord's number and call him. Lord will safely direct you to the Gaio office. Okay, we're going to invite first aid assistance from Ghana Health Service. I think when Dr. Elvis was speaking, and even when Lord was speaking, they mentioned a lot about the health implications of the air pollution. That comes with a lot of respiratory issues. Those who are born asthmatic have their issues, and those that through the air pollution come with their own respiratory issues, they have to find response measures. So we have Nancy Derry and Prince Kwesi Aku, who are here to guide us on what to do. Can we give it up for them, please?
All right, thank you. Good afternoon once again. So I'm Prince, I'm here with my colleague Nancy from the University of Ghana Medical Center to just take us through how to manage some emergency respiratory conditions. Now, today marks exactly 24 years of a dark day in Ghana. Who could remind us on that? Exactly 24 years we experienced a very devastating disaster.
24 years.
Yes, please.
Some people were not born.
Yeah. Yeah. May 9 disaster, right? At the stadium, the football match. As against Kosovo. Exactly. So, even though most of us were not born by that time, or some people were now crawling or breastfeeding, I believe we may have heard what caused the disaster. Anyone to just tell us something? Like, help say, sure.
Yeah, so apart from the humanity that people were saying, like, it shouldn't be a humanity, and for that which gave us the opportunity to be ahead of the that population. I think that which caused panic, because people were running, as I said, that there was beef, that which caused most of those supporting that.
Also, thank you very much. I think he wants to add to what you gave us.
I think, you see, at first, Ghana, the word tear gas, we've heard, but we've not seen it before, how it works, how it is. So, people were thinking, but the worst cause was the tear gas the police released. That caused most of the death. If not, it would have been minor injuries due to the tear gas. That's because most of them, the weather was so hot, and then the way the tear gas also was breathing in, automatically just collapsed. So even some of them, at times not collapsed, but later when we sent them to the mortuary, they were back to life once again.
Awesome. Thank you very much. So those are very great responses. So the key notes he made mention was the fact that in order to curb the disturbances, the police had to fire a tear gas. Unfortunately, people didn't know how to maintain their composure or steeze during such a catastrophic event. Now, a chunk of the dead, that's about 116 of them, out of the total number that died because of compressed asphyxia. Now, compressed asphyxia occurs when your brain centers is short of oxygen supply, not due to any injury, but due to compression from a force. So as they were all running here and there to just find places to settle, people started pressing against their colleagues at the stadium. And then as of that time, the architects noted that the stadium didn't have enough exits for people to go out of the place. And that's one of the major reasons why people fell on others and then caused them to compress their breathing centers. So when your body is deprived of oxygen for some time, it leads to organ failure and then eventually brain death, and then you are dead. So trauma, which he spoke about, that's the injury, was just a tiny of the number that caused the death. Most of them was due to the asphyxia that resulted from the stampede. So normally in a situation like this, when it occurs, or we found ourselves in an area where a stampede occurs like this, try to find yourself closer to the exits or a place with lesser pressure, where you are able to get enough oxygen to breathe in and out. If you want to get close to where the group of people are, more pressure and then less oxygen for you to breathe, then you find yourself wanting. So as we are aware today, we are getting educated. When you find yourself in such a situation, advise yourself, get close to the edges of the exits in case the place is very enclosed so that you are able to save yourself. Thank you. Now, I believe most of us have heard about what first aid is, right? We've had instances in primary school, JHS, or even our senior high school. We have joined several talks on what first aid is about. Today, we want to look at some of the quick and immediate responses we'll give our families, our colleagues, or even our strangers that we meet on the roadside in case they find themselves in any depressive respiratory situation. So our moderator made mention of an individual suffering from an asthmatic attack. You can be sipping on your tea and then you get choked. Your body will be deprived of oxygen, so you will need help. An individual even could find him or herself drowning in water. You will get choked and then you will lack enough oxygen that will make your brain centers work properly. Or even in some situations, you will find yourself getting allergic. So Doc mentioned it in his presentation that people are allergic to some pollen. So due to some allergic reactions, it leads to anaphylactic shock. And then that can also lead to an individual having a respiratory distress. Today, when you hear about an individual being in respiratory distress, it means that the person is finding it difficult to breathe. In our primary school, we're taught we breathe in oxygen and we give out carbon dioxide. So there should be this balance. So in a situation where there is any blockage or any impediment to this proper flow of oxygen and then carbon dioxide, an individual is termed to be in respiratory distress. Hope we are okay. I've not mentioned any big term that will confuse any of us, so we'll proceed. First aid is just to enable us to preserve lives in case of any situation, or also to prevent any further harm or injury. So like I mentioned in the May 9 disaster, for instance, if individuals had a little idea about first aid management, we would have even lessened the number of people that would have passed on due to the disaster. And then also, first aid is also to promote recovery, because the moment you are able to provide a quick first aid treatment to an individual from here, and then the minute it takes for an emergency service to get in or an ambulance or get into an appropriate medical center, that few 5 minutes or 10 minutes is able to get the person back to life. That is why first aid is very important. This concept we must always study. Thank you. Okay, so I've mentioned about asthma attack, anaphylactic shock, drowning, and then have an individual having a respiratory arrest. That is total cessation of breathing, which could be very life-threatening. Today we are going to focus more on choking. Because individuals can get choked at any time, ourselves, even our kids, and then young children suffering from swallowing pellets and then pellets all over. We have to consider management of this. Good. So my colleague would demonstrate the universal choking sign for us to have a look at it, so that as and when you walk around and you see anyone showing this type of sign, you know that this individual is in distress or is in danger, and then he or she needs our help.
So we have the universal choking sign. Find the person and splashing around the throat if you are choking. Clearly, when you look at the facial expression, you can tell that the person is choking. Then breathing difficulty, inability to speak, cough, or breathe clearly. So there are some that are unable to.
You said they're choking, like if you see the person choking.
Yes, the person, if they are choking, most often when people are choking, you will see that they hold their neck with their hands, sometimes one or two. So you can see the facial expression. Try it. they are trying to bring
So
them
what should I
out.
do?
So these are the signs that you now come to what you will do when you get. So then you have the person is unable to breathe. And then we have audible distress, wheezing. So it's a high pitched sound. That's the wheezing. Okay. Then we have cyanosis. So because you are deprived of oxygen, okay, you find the person's lips or face turning blue. So most often when their lips or their face is turning blue, it's an indication that there's not enough oxygen in the system. And then in severe cases, panic, distress, and possible loss of consciousness. So obviously you panic because you can't breathe, okay? And then you are in distress because you are trying to bring that object out. And possible loss of consciousness. You are not getting enough oxygen into your system, so you black.
Alright, thank you. So one would ask, how would I note a bluish discoloration on a dark-skinned person? As you know, our curriculum that we use, the white that developed it for us. So in their books, we write. So it's very easy or clear to identify cyanosis in the white person. However, for blacks, you take in notes under the eyelids, you see that the color changes good. And then the lips, and sometimes the nail bed. Exactly. At least with that one, it's very easy. But for the whites, with their skin alone, it's very easy for you to see that the skin is turning blue. Exactly. So you'll be able to identify this. So these are some of the signs you should recognize that an individual is in a respiratory distress. More importantly, the universal choking sign, an individual having difficulty in breathing and others. Now, we will proceed and then look at what we would have to do. What you will have to do in case of finding yourself in an emergency situation. I asked what is expected to do in case of identifying an individual in such a situation. First of all, you should think about your safety and that of the safety of the individual you are coming across. Because as you walk by the roadside and you see an individual clutching a piece of the throat, you wouldn't know if it's a group of people that have laid ambush for you to kidnap you or is just a setup that they want to do. So first of all, you must ensure and be aware that you are within a safe environment. A safe environment. And then you get closer to the individual and then ask, are you okay? Are you comfortable? Can you speak? Can you breathe? Are you able to cough? So you ask all these questions to assess if the individual is responsive or not. If the individual is unresponsive, you then proceed to assess whether the airway is patent. So as we proceed to the presentation, you will hear me say airway. So airway is like the exactly. That's the airway or the pipe. That's the airway. I hope you are okay. Yes. So in this good. So you ensure that your environment is safe. You assess the victim's responsiveness and the breathing pattern. You call for emergency services, provide for support for breathing, and then stay with the patient as the professional help arises. We have this approach, that's the Dr. ABC approach. So for Dr. ABC approach, first of all, you ensure you are safe, and then that's of your client's environment, and the environment is safe from any harm or damage. And then you check for the client's responsiveness. So like I said, you tap the client, are you okay? Can you hear me? Can you breathe properly? Are you able to cough? You should be able to assess all this, and then you go ahead to clear the airway, you check for breathing, and then you perform chest compressions. We are going to go through all these steps so that we understand how they all work or function. Now,
I'm so sorry. 2 seconds. So sorry. We'll continue in just a second after I finish talking. Please, has everyone taken? Has everyone, aside our speakers, has everyone taken? And the silence is consent. Has anyone who has taped here eating here? Do you have anyone like that? You take when you're eating here? No? So everyone who takes here is taking their food away. Deal?
Yeah.
Perfect. Please take 2 seconds. Once you the best way, you just choose the best way. Great. Please carry on. Thank you very much.
Great. So this individual that is in respiratory place, his or her airway may be obstructed. So like I said, within the space of choking or inhaling any poisonous gas, your airway is obstructed. This obstruction may either be partial or complete obstruction. I believe most of us over here have been choked by a bone before, right? Or not all of us.
I've been choked by
Something before, not a bone. Good. So even if you are choked by a bone, especially is exactly. So for partial obstruction, you are able to at least speak, give me water. You are able to even say, I'm choking. You can speak. For that one, you are able to clear the airway by coughing effectively. You are able to take out that foreign body from the airway. So that one is partial obstruction. So for you as an individual, if the client is able to verbalize that, oh, I am choking, and the client is able to speak audibly, you encourage him or her to cough out the foreign body, and then you are okay. But the time we need your experts first aid management is when there is complete obstruction. Complete obstruction. So like in the situation of our infants or our kids, some of them may swallow a coin or a die or a pebble. They are not able to speak for it to mean the type of object that they have swallowed there. So for that situation, we need to step in and then provide a first aid management because they are not able to cough, they are not able to speak, and then they are also finding it difficult to breathe. Are we okay? Now, we proceed to look at the steps involved in assessing a client or an individual that is choking. First of all, like I might mention, you ask, are you choking? Can you speak? So you assess the situation immediately. And then you determine the severity of the choking. So whether it is partial or a complete choking that is being experienced. And then you act or assess or reassess. So we are going to have scenarios or situations where we go in and then step and provide this first aid treatment. In individuals or adults that have had a partial blockage, as we see on the screen, you encourage the adult or child to cough on their own, and then they are able to dislodge the foreign body from their mouth. If you encourage coughing and then it's not able to come, you go ahead and then you do 5 back blows and then 5 abdominal thrusts. In the situation when the individual is unconscious, because after some moments in time and then you are not getting oxygen to your vital signs like your brain and then your heart, you will go unconscious. You are supposed to guide the individual down and then you proceed with CPR. So we'll go through that step as well. So before we come to doing the trust for pregnant women, infants, and then choking, we would want to demonstrate that of choking in an adult so that we all take a look at it. So I'm taking my photos of bump and then I get to choke.
First, you encourage the person to cough, okay? To cough actively. So after coughing several times, the person is still struggling, then we'll move on to the back blow, okay? So you use your palm to support the person's chest. Ask the person to bend over a little as though he wants to vomit. Then you use your palm, this side, hit the back. Please don't hit it so hard, okay? Hit it first enough, okay? Get it, so.
So she was hitting, and then the foreign body came out. That's the first scenario. So she will do the next one that the foreign body doesn't come out.
now the foreign body is looking.
So if you hit and then the foreign body comes out, remember you have to support the person, the person's chest, then you hit. Okay? If it's a child, please be mindful of how you hit. Because as a first aider, our main aim is to prevent further injury, to promote recovery, and also to preserve the person's life. So the person is choking, you don't want to add another problem. So you hit and then hit such that you don't harm the person. Okay, so after hitting, if the person is still choking, then we'll come to the abdominal thrust. Okay, so you stand behind the person, then make a fist above your belly button. Okay, you put your hand above, then let me turn so that. Then you grab like this. So now you are going to push in and then up. Are you getting it? So with your fist above the belly button, then your hand supporting, you push in and then up. Okay, so you want to force the diaphragm to push the object out. So in, out, in, out. Okay, so try. Please make sure you are standing properly. Then, are you getting it?
Yeah.
Please, did you get it?
Yeah.
So try again.
Oh!
Yeah, wow.
You have to be very tactical about it. Remember, the thing is up here, so you have to push in and then up so that you can force the object out. Okay, that is the abdominal thrust. In the case of a pregnant woman, remember the abdomen is like this. So you can't put your hand on the abdomen. You are going to harm the baby. So that is where the chest thrust comes in. Chest. So for someone who is not pregnant, the belly is there, you can use the abdomen. You do the abdominal thrust. But in a pregnant woman, it's chest thrust. So you put your hand, first, same thing, below the breastbone here. So that is like slightly above the belly. Okay, so above it like this. The same technique. In, out. Please. You're all going to try it. Honestly, when you observe, it looks easy. But when you have to try, you realize it's not easy. So, like this, then in, out. In, out. Good. So you can do all this and still the person is choking. Sometimes the person can become unconscious because time has passed and there is no oxygen going into the system. So the person becomes unconscious. If the person becomes unconscious, what do? That is where, okay, so now next slide. So for a baby who is choking. So those of us who have a baby. So your palm, this whole hand is supposed to support the baby. So from the neck, then the hands on the side, the left on the side. So this hand is lying in the middle of the baby like this. So the baby is facing down, with the face down. Please do get it. So your fingers like this support the neck. Then the baby lies longitudinal. Sorry, yeah. Oh, this is like this. Then you do the back blows for the baby. Okay, so remember it's a baby. It's a baby, so please don't hit her. Okay, you do. If for them you do the back blows for them, for the babies. And please, while you are doing this, be sure you've called. I know Ghana here we don't really call the ambulance, but be ready to transport your baby to the hospital because you can do it and it will fail. And then in a case where the baby becomes unconscious, you do chest compressions for the baby. So we are going to demonstrate that as well. The same for the adults, you do chest compression. So I'm going to ask you a question. So imagine you have an obese person, and look at me, I'm small. Let's say I can't wrap my hand around the individual. What do you think I'll do to assist the person?
I
I think that was the question I was about to ask.
What do you think I'll do?
The question again.
You see,
So-
if the person is obese, and then maybe you cannot come back.
My hands can be back. Good. So we have the self. You can do it yourself. In case you are choking alone, you are home, you are eating, and then you are choking. You can do the abdominal thrust yourself. So you can do it like I was demonstrating. Okay. So my hand here, then I lift myself. If as I'm doing all that, it's not coming. I can't do the back view, but I can get. Oh, this is short. You can get a firm table or chair, anything that is firm. Then you lean over it. So it's the same thing. So that one can give a bigger force. Okay.
You're taller, so you can try with this.
So it's the same technique, except that this one will give a stronger force. Okay. So you lean on it, then you push in. Oh God, this is short. Oh God. Anyway, so for the obese person, you encourage the person to cough. That is always the first thing. That is if it's partial, the person is conscious. Cough is the first thing. Encourage the person to cough. Then, if it's not working, you do the back blows. If it's not working, so for the obese person, if the person is partial, you can direct the person cough. If it's not working, you do the back. If it's not working, then you direct the person to do the self maneuver. You get a firm table and then direct the person to do it. In all this, remember that you have to plan on how to immediately transport the person to the hospital because it can fail. So in a case where your patient becomes unconscious, what do? We have the compressions. That is where our CPR will come in. So I'll leave the CPR for the other part because it's mostly the last option that we have. Okay. It's mostly the last step that we do. The last thing that we do before we reach them. Even when you get to the hospital, you haven't done it. Or you are even doing it, we continue. Okay. So we'll come back to the CPR.
All right, thank you. So we have demonstrated how to aid or assist an individual who is choking, and in situations where the individual is obese or pregnant, we've also looked at how to manage one. We've also looked at how to even perform this self-help technique on ourselves as the self-help technique in case you don't have anyone available to assist you with the Heimlich maneuver. Now, as we have already said, there are times that an individual may become unresponsive when you go ahead and do the abdominal thrust or the back blows and then the chest thrust. So this individual becomes unresponsive. So what do? You just have to guide and then enable the individual to lie down flat. So assess, ensure that your surroundings are very clean and then there is no harm or danger around. And then you observe, see if the individual is breathing. So you can assess that by passing your hand behind the person's nostrils and then see if the individual is breathing, or look at the chest movements of the person to see if one is breathing or not. And then you proceed to assess the individual's pulse. Like I think most of us have been to pulse facilities. Exactly. So you can feel the heartbeat like this.
You feel the pulse.
The pulse there. Exactly. So with that one, you have to assess to ensure that the individual is conscious. So there are some situations where you assess the pulse, and then the individual, the pulse is pulsating. So this individual is alive, but there is no breathing. So what you should do is that you provide the individual with rescue breaths. I hope you understand. Rescue breaths. Now, in Ghana here, one would ask, so how, we've heard about providing mouth-to-mouth rescue breaths in such a situation where we find, so hey, I don't know this individual, you are a stranger, I just met you. Why would I come and be putting my lips on you and go to assess that? So that's what you will do. And then if the individual is not having it's not breathing, the pulse are absent, they will now zoom into our CPR. So you give 30 chest compressions, and then you give 2 rescue breaths home. And they will demonstrate that one for us to take a very good look at that. And then in all this, we are saying that you shouldn't be doing this as your own self-doctor, that I'm going to do this to revive the individual. You are not a doctor, you are not a medical practitioner. You should be calling your emergency or an individual who has a car and then proceed to take the person to the hospital. So these are just quick fixes that we want to offer to our friends and then our colleagues in case of any emergency. And then in the CPR2 for babies, after the back task which she demonstrated, and then the baby is not able to respond, you have to go ahead and then provide chest compressions. But you don't expect me to use this my huge palms, both of them, and then press the sternum of the baby. This baby would die. So you just use your 2 fingers, your index finger and your middle finger, to provide that chest compressions. But in adults, we are going to use our both hands to provide the chest compressions. And then in providing some of these compressions to, for instance, the Heimlich maneuver, be aware that there may be some things you should consider. If you do it too vigorously, you will fracture the individual's ribs. So we should just have to tone with the intensity of the force that we apply during this resuscitation on individuals. Also, just also have to take note of situations like bleeding that may occur. So if you see signs of bleeding and stuff, you need to ensure that the individual needs an emergency. So you shouldn't waste time, just take the person to the hospital. I don't know if our video can be played. If you can, it's not possible. Say,
yeah.
Sorry.
Can I ask a question as to
Yes, please.
I'm Lord.
Okay, sure.
So I want to find out. Usually, I know I'm familiar with the back thing, but doing my palm like this, not like this. So when a child is coughing, like you do like this thing. I want to know if it can be. And the second question I want to find out is, when you're doing the back, is there a part of the back or any part of the back? Is it like a particular place or they are targeting or anywhere you can just like that?
Okay, because the respiratory system, okay, so we need you to hit here. So between these bones here, you hit. Okay, so we want to put pressure, and then if the object is here, stuck here, it can vibrate and then move it out. Okay, so the reason why for kids you prefer to use this is just to reduce pressure. Remember, the person is a child. You don't want to hit so hard. So when you do this, you reduce the amount of pressure that you put on the child.
Yes, please.
Yeah.
It's not clear. Okay, it's fine. It's the same thing that we demonstrated. It's fine.
We could search it online for you.
No, it's fine.
Okay.
It's the same thing that we
You demonstrated all.
Yes. Yes,
Yeah, I wanted to know. You said for babies you use your. You said for babies you use your 2 fingers, and for adults you use both hands. But can you indicate the age bracket so that who is a baby and who is an adult? Because we have in between two. So are we? Because you can people who are not that. And you go and use 2 hands and it will be a problem. So you can indicate the age bracket so that we know which one you use 2 hands or 1 hand or 2 fingers.
Alright, thank you. So infants that are less than a year, so that's infants, less than a year, you just place this at the nipple line, then you just do the compressions for them. And then even for some children that you are able to even though you are using both hands, you still have to consider the severity of the force that you apply to their sternum, otherwise you may end up breaking it. And then you would have to also make sure the individual lays on a very flat surface, not on a bumpy surface, to make your CPR very effective. Now, so this CPR normally comes in when the individual goes unconscious, because when you're unconscious, we're able to encourage you to do your coughing, and then you do the back taps and go, then the object comes out. However, when the individual goes unconscious, you now proceed to do the cardiopulmonary resuscitation, which includes the chest compressions and then the good. So we are going to demonstrate. Okay, sure. Your question.
I want to know those who cannot talk. Yeah. So how will you say in the partial situation the person have to speak out, but some people they can't talk. So like I mean, those who are dumb, yeah, those who are dumb. How will the person speak out? How will you get the person to?
Okay. So prior to that, this individual may have already been clinging to the truth. So you already know that this person